Welcome back, everyone. This is Jaron Winrick with the Fortified in Faith podcast. This is a Christian podcast, and it's our mission to help strengthen you in your faith. As you can see, this is the first video podcast, so I hope the visuals makes it more enjoyable for you guys. Today, we're going to be diving into how you can build an unshakable identity and what the benefits of that are. This is a super deep podcast, and it's going to require you to think very deeply about the things you put your identity in. So my goal is to help you see what exactly you allow to define your identity. I hope this gives you a new perspective and shows you how valuable you actually are. So, in order to build an unshakable identity, we first need to identify what we're putting our identity in. What are the things that you believe determine your value as a person? I personally used to base my value off of the things I enjoy doing or thought made me stand out as a person. And that was sports, fitness, grades, partying, success, and lots of other things. I never had taken the time to think deeply about these things and to realize the impact they had on me as a person. I was constantly looking for something that gave me value. And I started to ask, what was I valuable because I was funny? Was I valuable because I had something to offer other people? Was I valuable because I could do certain things that other people couldn't do? Like, I subconsciously wanted to figure out what made me valuable as a person, and what made me stand out. So when I had my identity placed in these things, I was living this happy, sad lifestyle, very up and down lifestyle. If things were going good in my life, then I was doing good. But if things were going bad, then I was doing bad and I was all torn down. And I lived like this for the majority of my life. I didn't really know that there was another way to live. So the happiness I felt was dependent on the things I placed my identity in. For example, I used to strongly place my identity in my accomplishments. If I was accomplishing things and doing well, then I was happy. But if I failed or if I wasn't doing well, then I was down on myself. And this made me feel like a piece of who I was missing. And the ironic thing is, it kind of was. Since I placed my value in my accomplishments, when I wasn't accomplishing anything, I didn't have value. And that is how my brain was working with these things. So this also applies to the identity I was putting in being liked by other people. If people liked me, I felt valuable. But if people didn't like me, then I felt worthless. And the sad reality is not everybody likes me. So I realized that there is a direct connection between the quality of life you live and the things you put your identity in. If you're doing well in the things you place your value in, then you feel valuable. But if you fall short, then you start to feel worthless. That's the connection I was making with my identity and my quality of life. So the ultimate question becomes, what do I put my value and my identity in that will keep me sustainable as a person? Because we see that when you place your identity in things that are temporary, your happiness is temporary. We need something that's unwavering, that does not change, to determine our worth so we can be secure no matter what happens in our life, good or bad. So, how do we figure out what makes us valuable? And how is this determined? Ultimately, you have to go to who created you. Who is someone that knows your value, never changes, and we can find our identity in? That's Jesus. Okay, so let me explain why this makes sense and how I got to this conclusion. Let's say, for example, you wanted to figure out how to build a house. Who would you go to? You would go to a home builder. In the same way, who would ultimately know why you are valuable? The one that built you, the one that created you. Just as a house is made intentionally and with purpose, so are you. When you find your identity in God, your worth and your value are now anchored to something that is unchanging and eternal. It's not temporary. This means that when you face hardships, your identity hasn't moved an inch because your value is no longer tied to the things that can change. Let me give you more examples here. Let's say you place your identity in your career. When you succeed, you feel proud and you feel confident. But what happens if you fail, or you get fired, or when you get older and you retire? You no longer have the thing that you put your value in. You no longer have the thing that determined your worth as a person. So, let's say you place your identity in your appearance and how you look. When you look good, you feel good. But what happens when you age, which is a guarantee, or you lose your fitness, like your health starts declining? You become unhappy and insecure because you no longer have what you thought made you valuable as a person. This is why placing your value in something that cannot change is essential to building an unshakable identity. So that's the core message that I want you guys to take away, is that if you put your value in things that are temporary, your happiness and your self-worth is going to be temporary. But if you put your value in something that is eternal and everlasting and never changing, your value and your happiness will always be there, no matter what happens to you. So you are ultimately valuable because God created you with unique talents and purpose, not because of how much you accomplish, how many followers you have on Instagram, how successful you are. And the world will tell you this. Like growing up, this is what I heard. Like you become valuable as, you get a good paying job, or you have all these achievements, or you achieve this status. But God says you already have value without doing anything. You're valuable. And ultimate foundation for this, for your value, is one that does not fail. And from my personal life experiences, The only thing that has not failed me is God. And on top of that, He knows why I was created, why I am valuable, and He has a purpose for my life. So why wouldn't I want to find my identity in Him? So I want to shift gears here and do a recap on the steps you can take to create an unshakable identity. So if you can create a note on your phone or write these things down, I strongly encourage you to. But I really had to think deeply about these things and really assess what I put my identity in. And I know it's not a comfortable thing to think about, so it may push you out of your comfort zone a little bit, but it can really help you. So here are the steps I took to assess and correct my identity. So the first step is to determine what your identity is currently built on. What is the foundation and the core of your identity? And this is going to be the most important part. To figure this out, I had to ask myself, what do I spend the majority of my time thinking about? One's identity is often what the mind obsesses over. So if you're continually thinking about something, it's a good indicator of what your identity is in. So if I'm continually asking myself, am I impressive enough? Am I successful enough or liked enough? I may be linking my identity to my performance or the approval of others. So my next indicator was my emotional triggers. Where do I feel the strongest emotions at in my life? This often reveals what your identity is rooted in. So, for example, if somebody were to criticize me, I would get super upset. And I had to ask myself, well, why do I get upset? And ultimately, what you come down to is I was putting my identity in being a perfect person. And I'm not perfect at all, but I was subconsciously doing this. So if somebody criticized or critiqued what I was doing, I felt threatened because I felt like the the thing that made me valuable was being taken away from me. And another question you can ask yourself is, what would you fear to lose the most in your life? Is it your reputation, your fitness, your relationships? These all can identify what your identity is in, even if you don't realize it. So if you thought you had any sources of identity after asking yourself these questions, write them down and get them in your notes. So the second step is to test it. Are these things temporary or will they fade over time? Will this identity hold firm when life gets hard? That's the big one. Will your identity stand the trials of time? If these things shift, change, or fade over time, you should consider rebuilding the foundation of what you put your identity in. And this will help you stabilize and secure yourself as a person. We cannot live without an identity source as humans. We naturally seek value and what makes us valuable and what we're here for. So you have to consciously replace your previous identity with new identities, or you're going to feel empty. You're going to feel like you have no value or worth, obviously. So you have to replace it with something else. So after you redetermine, reassess, and you rebuild your identity, you now have to constantly remind yourself of what your new identity is, or if your identity was already firm, just reminding yourself to stay in that identity and walk in that identity, to make sure you can reprogram or change how you think about these things, because you're naturally going to default to what you had already been doing. And this is just going to happen over and over and over again. So you got to really be intentional about working on these things. That wraps up this episode of Fortified in Faith. I hope this has helped you think differently about your identity and the things you put your value in. And hopefully this shows you that your value isn't earned. Your value is given to you by God, and it can't be taken away no matter what happens. So if you guys enjoyed this podcast, please share it. And if you know somebody that you believe this podcast could help, please send it their way. But until next time, guys, stay confident, stay bold, and stay fortified in faith. God bless you all.